on KTN Prime.
Reprieve from The Hague. Judges grant Uhuru's postponement wish.
Democracy under attack. Parliament votes to gag Kenyan media.
Most of the people who are perpetuating cheating in examinations are actually teachers.
The cheating teachers. Exams body cracks the whip.
And meet the little boy who stole the limelight from the Pope.
This is KTN Prime with Linda Oguttu and Ben Kitili.
Tonight, a dark cloud hangs over the Kenyan media yet again. For the upteenth time, Parliament is seeking to control what the media can or cannot say.
Earlier today, the National Assembly, without any due regard to the provisions of Article 34 of the Constitution, passed draconian provisions that would take Kenya back to the dark days.
The provisions include the formation of a government-appointed tribunal to police the media and impose hefty fines on journalists deemed to have engaged in misconduct.
Well, here at KTN, we reject the provisions with the contempt they deserve. Many distinguished Kenyans have lost life and limb fighting for freedom in this country, and we will not stand by as members of Parliament seek to reverse the hard-earned gains.
We join the rest of the media fraternity in condemning this uncalled-for attempt to roll back the gains of democracy in the country.
We wish to remind President Uhuru Kenyatta of his pledge to journalists during the media breakfast that freedom of the media would be the hallmark of his administration. We also ask him to recall the provisions of Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to which Kenya subscribes.
We sincerely hope that he will reject these dastardly provisions when they finally come to his desk for a signature.
You're in time for KTN Prime. Many thanks for joining us. We begin in The Hague, where the trial of President Uhuru Kenyatta has now been postponed by at least 2 months.
Earlier this afternoon, ICC judges ruled to have the trial begin on the 5th of February 2014 to accommodate concerns of both the prosecution and the defense.
KTN's political reporter Sam Ogina begins our coverage tonight.
The reprieve at The Hague came as the country awaited news from New York on Kenya's bid for a deferral of the cases. Trial Chamber 5B said it had no choice but to postpone the case to February the 5th. The chamber noted that both the defense and the prosecutor were in agreement on postponing the trial date to February 2014. Last week, the defense team of President Uhuru Kenyatta applied to have the trial pushed to 12th February over what is termed as abuse of process by the prosecution. But the prosecutor held that the trial should not start later than February 3rd. The unanimous decision by the chamber now leaves one more critical application before the judges. In mid-October, Uhuru asked the judges to stop his case altogether on allegations of witness manipulation and tampering. He also sought in the alternative to have what he called an evidentiary hearing to resolve the issue before his trial could begin on November 12th. Uhuru has sent mixed signals on whether he will head to The Hague for his trial, with the clearest signal relayed in Oloitoktok during Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku's homecoming last weekend.
Yangu ni kuambia ya kwamba tuko pamoja nanyi, tutafanya kazi pamoja nanyi, tuunganishe wa Kenya, na mambo haya ambayo mnasikia ya huko mimi sitaki kuyataja. Viongozi anyway tuko hapo hiyo line hiyo.
For now it is clear that the president's trial will not start in November, but it could kick off as soon as February if the UN Security Council that is currently meeting in New York does not defy it. That decision is expected in the next few days. Samugina, KTN.
Right, so Parliament has once again moved to silence the media through a draconian bill that reached a critical stage today. Let me bring in my colleague Ben Kitili to tell us what this bill is all about. Ben.
No, indeed, Linda, that the amendments to that Kenya Information and Communications Amendment Bill 2013 was one of many amendments that were introduced before Parliament when there were only about 28 members of Parliament in the chamber. Let's now take a look at what the Kenyan Constitution says about freedoms of the media. Now, Article 34(2) of the Constitution says that the state shall not exercise control over or interfere with any person engaged in broadcasting, the production or circulation of any publication or the dissemination of information by the medium. That is 34(2)(a) of the Constitution. And B, of course, goes on to say that the state shall not penalize any person for any opinion or view or the content of any broadcast, publication or dissemination. Of course, many media the media fraternity will be saying that the Parliament has no right whatsoever to gag the media. Let's now take a look what the state can do. Now, 34(3) of the Kenyan Constitution rather says broadcasting and other electronic media have freedom of establishment subject only to the licensing procedures. That is, only the state can only, of course, determine the licensing procedures of the broadcasting house. That is 34(3) of the Kenyan Constitution. And B says that the independence of control by government, political interest or commercial interest. That is, of course, 34(3)(b), independent of control by government, political interest or commercial interest. Now let's take a look at what Parliament can do about all this. The Parliament shall enact legislation that provides for the establishment of a body which shall A, be independent of control by government, political interest or commercial interest. And another thing is, of course, a body that reflects the interests of all sections of society. That is what the Kenyan Constitution says about gagging of the media or attempts by the state to do so. Let's now take a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations, which states, that is Article 19, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Those are some of the things that Kenyan media fraternity will be hoping the state and indeed Parliament is looking at. Linda.
So do you have 1 million shillings put aside just
if they come for me, Linda, I'll think I go to farming or something.
No, we'll bail you out. We'll do a fundraising and we'll make sure you're out.
Okay.
Alright, you're watching KTN Prime. Let's stay with that particular story. As we mentioned at the top of this newscast, Parliament has once again moved to silence the media through a draconian bill that reached a critical stage today. The amendments to Kenya Information and Communication Act mean that a government-appointed tribunal will now decide for the media what kind of content to carry. Journalists who flout the code to be determined by that tribunal will be forced to pay as much as 1 million shillings in fines. Media stakeholders have rejected the move, terming it as an attack on democracy. KTN's Edith Kimani reports on what could be the beginning of a very dark hour for freedom in the country.
In the last few weeks, the Kenyan Fourth Estate has had its fair share of sticks, stones, and some very tough words thrown at it. Thursday afternoon, it was the National Assembly's turn. At lightning speed in a National Assembly with just a handful of legislators, the MPs passed final amendments of the Kenya Information and Communications Amendment Bill 2013 with its severe clauses intact.
We really had to go through very difficult times going through this committee. We had various discussions with various stakeholders. But finally, Mr. Speaker, we were able to actually come together as stakeholders, as the committee and all the relevant people who are interested in this bill, and came up with a consensus.
This is a very, very good bill, a bill that sets up a body that is free of the stakeholders, media, government, politicians. A bill that, a body that will regulate both the media and all other stakeholders.
What engineers of this bill are calling good are a set of clauses that seek to, in essence, weaken and eventually control the media. The bill seeks to, among other things, create a tribunal that will handle media complaints both from and about the media and issue out penalties as it sees fit. The tribunal itself is a subject of much debate, as it is envisioned to leave out media stakeholders among its sitting members. The creation of such a tribunal will also effectively make the Media Council of Kenya redundant. This tribunal, according to the bill, will have powers to impose hefty fines on journalists and media houses who do not toe the line. Individual journalists would be ordered to pay up to 1 million shillings, while media houses would have to pay up to 20 million shillings for anything deemed to be controversial by the tribunal. The concern here is that government is hoping to silence the media by attempting to cripple it financially or the threat of it. Then there is a power the tribunal has to recommend suspension or deregistration of journalists at will. Will bold and daring journalists survive this tribunal? If President Uhuru Kenyatta's assurance at the much talked of state media breakfast is to be believed, then there is hope yet, since he would have it to append his signature for the draconian bill to become law.
As a media, you play a key role in the gathering and the processing of information. You occupy a special place through which you can guide public debate for the benefit not just of the media or government, but the whole country.
Media stakeholders are already looking to the president to make good his word. The Kenya Editors Guild, in a statement to newsrooms, said that should the bill sail through Parliament, it will reverse gains made in Kenya on media freedoms. The Editors Guild and indeed media practitioners fear that the bill will take the industry to days like these, when snakes could not be rattled, or these, when journalists were being arm-twisted to reveal their sources.
Be amended as proposed.
Even with the glaring assault on media freedoms the bill proposes, legislators quickly and rather nonchalantly got the bill through to its third reading, closing any room for further changes to its content. Their argument being,
this is a very, very good bill.
Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
Great. So Edith Kimani there reporting, according to the amendments to the Kenya Information and Communications Act, a government-appointed tribunal will decide for the media what kind of content to carry. Let's take a look at this story further and bring in a director from Article 19, Henry Maina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Come from an organization that campaigns for media freedom. What are your thoughts on the bill?
My quick thoughts when I listened to what Parliament was doing is that we are going to the pre-1998 days when there wasn't a clear law to safeguard media freedom in the country, and state operatives had a free hand to do what they wanted. And that even where we had the 1998 Act with the Section 88 that was used to raid the Standard Group, we seem to have reintroduced that through a back door, because it is creating a body that, one, in my opinion, is unconstitutional, because the body that is supposed to be created for licensing is not expected to do any other work apart from just purely managing frequency spectrum. But the media practitioners had proposed an entrenchment of the self-regulatory process, which had been on for years and had been perfected. Most people in their consultations with Parliament clearly pointed out what ought to be done.
I'll actually bring you back to that, but essentially, yes, what is the Kenyan media looking at from now on?
I think it's a dark time that individual journalists would be suspended, would be removed from a role of register for an ethical breach as opposed to a crime. And if that happened, yes, you might be entitled to appeal through a high court, but that's a lengthy and expensive process. But two, that media houses would be slammed by a fine of 20 million or 0.2% of their gross turnover, meaning that some media houses would be wound up. Immediately, one case goes through that tribunal, some organizations would not be able to remain in circulation because this body is expected to follow other processes to ensure that whatever fines they make are duly paid immediately an appeal is exhausted.
Maina, let me be the devil's advocate here. Is it that the Kenyan media isn't able to control itself, to regulate itself, that the government now has to come in from where you sit?
I think the reverse is true, that the Kenyan government has too many skeletons in its cupboard, and it has seen that media organizations are prying into it, and here it is struggling to be able to say we don't have a cupboard, leave alone one that has skeletons. So we need to be able to come back to our senses and understand that the government is not the guarantor of freedom of the press, that individuals and media houses, once licensed, are entitled to that. And the government ought to only put up mechanisms and structures that would facilitate that as opposed to restrict it. What we are seeing today, I think, is a sad thing, because I told people that Kenya today was parading itself in London under the Open Government Partnership as one of the most open governments, among only 6 in Africa that are part of the Open Government Partnership. On the other hand, in Nairobi, we had few MPs beginning to say they would not want journalists to do their work.
Is this the beginning of gagging then?
It is already. To understand that we still keep criminal defamation in our statute books, we still keep so many other laws that are not as progressive. To add on this one is just an extra challenge that journalists have to go through. Publication of false news is still a crime in our law book. So if we do not have an access to information law, you do your investigation to get information, they would still charge you with this. And a breach of 1 million, how many journalists have an extra million to pay? Or media houses have an extra 20 million to pay. And this is going to be made harder with the understanding that once the bill is signed into law, all media houses, radio and TV, would be expected to have a 60% local content airing. So you begin to understand that the turnover for you to be able to do productions that would make 60%. If today KTN had 45% of their airtime taken by advertisements, it means immediately this law is signed, you will breach all those contracts.
All right, finally, Maina, before I let you go, what then are the dangers of having a media that is not free in a country like Kenya?
One, the whole promise of Vision 2030 is going to be muted. Our Vision 2030 is built on a pillar of openness, on a pillar of allowing citizens to directly engage in governance and in government affairs. If that is not going to be permitted, then there is a whole mirage that the promise of development was a dream that Kenya would never attain, because access to information, media freedom are fundamental to any developmental process. We need to be able to understand that, and we need to remind our MPs that yes, legislation is their core role. We don't want to carry that out of them, but they must do it with clear understanding and responsibly too.
Okay. Henry Maina, Director, Article 19, thank you so much for speaking to us. I'm sure I'll be speaking to you a lot more in the coming days just to see how far this goes. Many thanks for sparing time to speak to KTN Prime. All right, that entire story about the media bill brings us to the big question tonight. And we're asking you, should a government-appointed body have the power to control the media in Kenya? Send us your yes or no response, of course, together with a short comment to the number 22155. You can tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Ben Kitili, at Linda Oguttu, and we will be sampling some of your views during this newscast. You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. Let's bring you news just in from the Kenya Defense Forces, and they say that they have executed an aerial offensive on a significant Al-Shabab training camp at Halagoon location at the Dinsu region of Somalia. KDF reports that they have successfully brought down the entire camp wiping out all Al-Shabab recruits that were inside and destroying 4 technical vehicles and a weapons store. The Kenyan forces within the AMISOM say the camp had over 300 Al-Shabab recruits at the time of the bombing, and all of them are believed to have perished in that assault. The camp is believed to be an important training ground for Al-Shabab operatives who are then used to infiltrate and carry out terror attacks on Kenyan soil. KDF says that this offensive is a continuation of the Jilib attack, in which an Al-Shabab commander, Abdullahi Ali, aka Ante and Abdi Fatah, were killed. We are following that story for you. And of course, as soon as we get more information, we'll run it by you. Let's bring you back to the country and look at some information that we got today from the Kenya National Examination Council, which now says teachers and invigilators are the ones assisting KCSE candidates to cheat in exams. As KTN's Rita Tinina reports, the KCSE exams may have only entered the second week, but the Kenya National Examinations Council is already grappling with cases of cheating.
With the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations now in the second week, the Kenya National Examinations Council convened an unusual press conference.
We are also concerned with the laxity with a few of the supervisors who are not doing their work.
Cases of cheating have in recent years dogged national exams. Several candidates have had their results cancelled over cheating. But this time it appears there are bigger fish in the cheating game.
Teachers, especially from private schools, including head teachers, are opening examination packets just before the examination is done in the morning, and some manage to copy 1 or 2 questions and they start using them to solicit for funds.
At the Kamukunji Secondary School, for instance, a clipboard full of notes was discovered by a NEC monitoring officer.
What time does a candidate who is also probably being watched by the others have to refer to this? And generally what happens, they just write the notes to repair.
And the vice, it appears, is widespread. From Kisii, Nairobi, Nandi, Marsabit, Homa Bay, Mombasa to Mumias. NEC says mobile phones are still being used in cheating. So far, 17 people have been arrested and arraigned in court for sending SMSs with extracts from the ongoing exams.
It is suspected some unscrupulous supervisors may be opening some of the question papers before they reach the schools.
7 people are being investigated for tampering with examination materials. NEC is now warning that teachers aiding candidates to cheat risk losing their jobs.
Then we communicate to the TSC or to any other stakeholder on the measures that they need to take.
According to the NEC Act 2012, exam cheating can attract a 5-year jail term, a fine of 1 million shillings, or both. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now to an update of that story of the train accident here in Nairobi. The driver of the bus that was involved in that collision was charged in court today as lawyers demanded the sacking of Traffic Commandant Samuel Kimaru. The driver was charged with the offense of causing death through dangerous driving. KTN's Patrick Amimo reports on that fallout.
At the Makadara Law Courts, Edward Githai Wanjau was in the dock. He was driving the ill-fated 33-seater Umo Inner Circle minibus that collided with the train at a level crossing in Mutindwa. He surrendered to police 7 hours after the fatal collision. He was charged with causing 9 deaths through dangerous driving and 2 other counts of blocking a railway line. He denied the charges and was remanded in custody for 7 days to allow police complete investigations. And the Matatu Welfare Association says drivers who flout traffic rules are now on their own.
Driving is a career, and drivers should carry their own cross.
But the Law Society of Kenya says it's not just the drivers who should be brought to book. The lawyers' organization has now filed a suit seeking to remove the traffic commandant Samuel Kimaru from office. In the application filed in Mombasa, LSK accuses Kimaru of acts of omission and gross neglect of constitutional and statutory duties. LSK has included the National Police Service Commission as respondents in the suit that seeks a declaration that the traffic commandant is unfit to hold office. LSK is seeking an order directing the Police Service Commission to sack Kimaru as an employee of the service. And the industry too is talking tough as the blame game begins.
It is high time the matatu, those genuine matatu circles and companies take charge. There is no shortcut. We'll have to go full blast on display mechanism.
At least 12 people died in the morning crash that left several others injured. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Well, the Mutindo accident has brought back into focus many similar disasters in the waiting.
Thousands of informal settlement dwellers around the city have moved and operates ever so close to railway tracks.
Betty Kialolu takes a trip into one such settlement where tragedy is never far away.
A tour through the Mukuru slums shows another worrying face of railway transport safety. Here, even the continuous loud hooting of an approaching train does not halt business. In this formal settlement, shops and houses are built less than a meter away from the rail track. Even more worrying, children play around and even on the track with abandon. In a previous interview, officials from the Rift Valley Railway told KTN that they have witnessed a number of deaths on the track.
They have infringed the track, whereby they have built these shanties almost next to the track, whereby it poses a challenge.
The train has got brakes. Using air brake, you should be able to stop, but not instantly. So it depends with the distance. You have seen the person crossing, or the person lying on the railway line, or an infringement in the line.
Meet Abdul Kengo. For 15 years now, he has taken the role of controlling traffic to avoid collisions at this busy railway point around Pipeline area.
Sisi ndio tunafanya kujitolea kusimamisha. Wengine wanakataa kusimama, tunawacha enda tu. Ukipatwa ni zida, shauri yako. Sisi waleri. Tunafanya kazi kwa watu, kuwasaidia. Kwa ajili wakigongwa hapa sisi tuko na zida.
Kengo tells us that he has seen a number of collisions at this point that sometimes result from impatient drivers who do not heed his call to stop.
Sasa tukaona warudishe ile watu walikuwa wanafungulia magari wanatoa kitambaa. Gari ya moshi ikitokea atakuja na kitambaa na simamisha magari. Akisimamisha magari anarudi anakaa. Anajua gari ya moshi itakuja saa fulani, anatoka anasimamisha magari pande hii.
Residents of Embakasi, where the railway cuts right in the middle of a link road, say that more needs to be done to train motorists on what to do when there is an oncoming train.
Kama pale tunavyoona pale hamna hata warning sign yoyote. Hakuna kitu inaonyesha ati kuna gari ya moshi inapita. Ni barabara na reli zinapitana. Sasa mimi nikitoka zangu huko sintapita tu.
With an increase in the use of railway transport in the country, an incident like the Mtindwa collision should be a wake-up call for authorities and the public to be vigilant around railway tracks. Betty Kialo, KTN.
So tonight we are reporting that the parliament is on its latest onslaught to gag the media, to control what the media can or cannot say. On the big question tonight, we're asking you, should a government-appointed body have the power to control the media in Kenya?
Let's see what some of you are saying. Franklin Bett says, anything against the constitution is not acceptable to me. Voted for it in clear mind.
Quick one here from Absalom Ongaya says, shame on them, Mr. President. Do us a right.